Hi, everybody. I'm Mark. I'm a recovered alcoholic, and it's great to be here on a Friday afternoon here on the eastern side of the U.S. I'm from Florida. My sobriety date is December 18th of 2018, and for that, I'm grateful. I have a sponsor, Lyle F., and he has a sponsor, and I sponsor other men. So that's one hand up, one hand down was taught to me, and that's what I try to do. I've been coming around for a while. My first meeting was in 1996, so I'm not a first time winner, a second time winner, a third time winner. I've put big chunks of time together. Some of that time was abstinence and irritable, restless, and discontentment, and some of that time was quality recovery that comes from staying in the triangle of unity, service, and recovery. And it's just, I that strange mental twist hits me, and it's amazing. People are like, I don't understand. You have all this going for you, and my experience has been that when things are going really well for me are usually the most opportune times to be most diligent. When the chips are down and things are out and stuff like that, like I usually do rather well, um, because I have a mission, but I get bored, and then all of a sudden I get in my head, the mental obsession takes over. It's funny because, when I came around to Alcoholics Anonymous, I thought the physical allergy, was the part, that's the part I could identify with the most. But after putting a number of years together on multiple occasions, when I go back out, I don't go back out on that physical allergy. I go back out on the spiritual malady, and then the mental obsession takes over. So it's like in reverse. And that's really, really appropriate for the step I'm speaking on, because the spiritual principle behind step 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve my conscious contact with God, and to seek his will, is faith. And I think to talk about step 11 a little bit, I think I need to talk about kind of like where the seeds were planted. So I was adopted, and I was like 2 months old. My mother came over here on the boat from England. My dad's Italian, my mother's British, and I was adopted through Catholic Charities. I was raised Roman Catholic. And so I was introduced to the church. I did the altar boy thing. I did every Sunday. I actually worked for the church, when I was a kid. And, I hear this a lot, and it's similar to my experience. My interpretation of what God was and wasn't was, I was already going to hell from a very early age. I lied. Like, I didn't understand the relationship. I understood, do this happens, don't do this, and this happens. And that's kind of like what was drilled into my head. And when alcohol and other dry goods were introduced into my life, I was a doomed cause. And if some of the things that happened to me in my life, why would God allow those things? And I used that as fuel for a very long time to continue to self-sabotage and do destructive things to myself and hurt the ones that I profess to love the most. And so that was my script. That was my life script that I acted out to a T. Would have won an Academy Award for it. And then I was introduced to this big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and to men who have worked these steps. And I had a hard time not understanding well, if I stop, drinking and doing other non-conference approved things, like, wouldn't my life get better? And the fact in my experience was that when that stopped, that's when that's when the rubber hit the road for me. That's when I had to think about really what this was about. When I was told that alcohol was but a symptom, I didn't know what to do with any of that. And I had to look at the underlying causes that the book said. When I saw the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, I really struggled with a lot of the language in there. And then I went from struggling with that and being willing to have another man take me through, all the way to memorizing pages and quotes and everything else and using it as a defense mechanism to keep you away from me. Because if I figured if I quoted the big book enough, you must have thought that I was working a good program, and really you couldn't see through me. And all I was hurting in that entire process was myself, of course. But it takes one to know one, and I just that was my experience, right, wrong, or indifferent. That was my experience. So step 11, really started, it says on page 85, suggest prayer and meditation. I didn't understand what meditation was, and I didn't understand what prayer was. And I certainly didn't understand what faith was, that spiritual principle. It was first introduced to me in step 3. Prayer for me today is a conversation. Just the way I'm talking to you is kind of like what my relationship with my higher power is, as compared to when I was a young buck and like I used to say all these scripted prayers. My relationship with my higher power today I think one of the big things is authenticity, and sought through prayer and meditation. It's funny. I used to be made to do things. I used to be made to go to church. I used to be made to go to meetings. I used to be made, okay, say this prayer in the morning from sponsors, or get quiet. And then, something clicked in the program, when being made turned into wanting to. And it's funny, I get the honor and privilege today to I have 2 sober homes here in the local area. I have 21 beds, and like part of our schedule is wake up is at 6, and we practice this step 11. We are in a group for the first 15 minutes of the day. And it's funny because most of the guys who come in really bucket that, and really like why. And I remember being that person too. Now, if I don't, within the first 5 minutes, the coffee's brewed and I'm on the couch and I'm getting quiet. If I'm not doing that, if I'm missing that, my day just is not the same. It's just not. And the funny thing is I want to do it. Like I actually look forward to doing it. Sometimes when the day before goes not so good, and I wake up and I'm kind of like, and I start thinking like, oh, well, you know what, I probably shouldn't do it today because I was a bad boy yesterday or something like that. I mean, I can really get caught in my head. I don't know if anybody can identify with that, but you know what? I know that's just my lower power talking to me, I like to call it, and telling me, wants me to break from that relationship. But, AA really reconfigured my relationship with God. So thought through prayer and meditation. Prayer is a conversation for me. One of my most simplest prayers is, God, use me as a vessel through which your grace and mercy flow. And I mean, and I'm not saying that, but when I'm in a bind, I got to remember that I'm a vessel, just the way other men and other women in the program have been vessels for me, of example, of being put in my life at divine times, things like that. That's what I pray and ask God for. What I love about step 11 is, and one of the first things I was introduced to was 86 and 87. And it goes backwards because it talks about retiring, and I'm going to kind of skip down and go to on awakening, this was the guide for me. This was kind of like what said like how it was going to go, because when I was a kid, it was just like wake up, say the Our Father, that was that, and go on in my day. AA is teaching me, it's presented to me on awakening, not like, at 11 o'clock in the morning and I'm up since 8. On awakening, let us think about the 24 hours ahead. We consider our plans for the day. That tells me, my mind's always going, okay? But I don't consider my plans. Sometimes I obsess on my plans for the day. And I know I'm in trouble when I'm doing that. And it kind of like this line kind of like really reminds me to put it in proper perspective. Before we begin, and I really learned how to pray from doing what I'm reading right now, what I'm going over. We ask God to direct our thinking, especially asking to be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, or self-seeking motives. By this time in the book, self-pity, dishonest, and self-seeking motives had already been presented to me. And I understand that feeling sorry for myself, not being honest, and being selfish are things that are directly relational to my alcoholism and other addictions. And it's just like it's asking me to be divorced from that. And left to my own devices, I can't do that. So this is a powerful statement for me. Under these conditions, we can employ our mental faculties with assurance, for after all, God gave us brains to use. It's like common sense. That's what that says to me. Our thought life will be placed on a much higher plane when our thinking is cleared of wrong motives. A lot of times I can't tell you what my motives are. Like it's not clear to me. And this is the importance of accountability in recovery, and in steps 10, and having that accountability partner. And when I was going through 4 and 5 and building that trust, because I don't know what my motives are. So, I mean, this is a great way for me to kind of like think about that a little bit, and also be able to like talk to one of my accountability partners, spiritual advisors, about it. In thinking about my day, I may face indecision, which happens quite a bit. I might not be able to determine which course to take, and I'm going to ask God for an inspiration, an intuitive thought, or a decision. And that, again, I simplified this, God divorced me from self-pity, dishonest, and self-seeking motives, with an inspiration or intuitive thought, show me what my next step is to be. I kind of like paraphrase this. I read this for a long time, but then it became ingrained in me, and it became a prayer, that I used as a guide. We relax and take it easy. We don't struggle. We often surprised how the right answers come after we've tried this for a while. Now, it tells me that once used to be a hunch or an occasional inspiration gradually becomes a working part of the mind. It says, being still inexperienced and having made just conscious contact with God, it's not probable we're going to be inspired at all times, and that I may pay for this presumption all sorts of absurd actions and ideas. That kind of was a relief to me, because there's a lot of truth in that. For instance, we use relationships. Oh, I know this is what God wants for me, or this is the job I'm supposed to have, and that's where that accountability partner, spiritual advisor, sponsor comes into play for me. Because sometimes my mind gets so cluttered, and I think my motives are right, and I think God's talking to me, and it's really not. But this is telling me very clearly that the longer I'm in the program, the longer I'm sober, the longer I'm seeking that relation with a higher power, the easier that becomes, and that my thought life and my life plane becomes a little more like, it becomes a little more easier, as opposed to me questioning everything. And in fact, it says this: nevertheless, we find that our thinking will, as time passes, be more and more on a plane of inspiration. We come to rely on it. We usually conclude the period of meditation with a prayer that we be shown all through the day what our next step is to be, and we be given whatever we need to take care of such problems. That was, I struggled with that. I'll give you, for instance, there was a time in my life when I was looking at a 9-year prison sentence, and I had a year to go to court. So the minimum would be a year. So I was going to prison. There was no doubt about it. It was just a matter of if it was going to be a year or if it was going to be 9 years. So you could imagine being in meetings with me back then. What I was sharing about quite frequently was that. And so reading this right here, what our next step is to be, I would just obsess on the future. I'd be future tripping, we call it, right? And we be given through the day what our next step is to be. We given whatever we need to take care of such problems. There's AA has taught me a lot about needs and wants. And, a lot of times what I need, is not comfortable. What I need is not pleasurable at all. And what I need, my willingness suddenly wanes, and I'm not really too into it. But it's what I need. Today, because of step 11, I realize the difference a little better than between needs and wants, first of all. And second of all, I understand that growth is often painful, and I've learned to look at it through my prayer and meditation as opportunities instead of life sentences or self-pitying moments. I look at a lot of challenges in life as opportunities. I have I've had sick family members. I've had, my own struggles. I've had, business stuff go on, and, I'm a, why me? Why me? Why me? Instead of like, God, what am I supposed to learn from this? God, who can I help through this? I can tell you one thing that's been a truth for me, and that truth for me has been that all my experiences, and I'll use this as an example. I've had a lot of estrangement with my kids, navigating this recovery experience. And a lot of that has to do with relapse, right? Years go back out. It's like, you make them feel safe, and you make them feel like, okay, Mark's got this. And then all of a sudden, bam, wham, right? Let the kids down, let the family down, things like that. So when these things have occurred, it creates a lot of trauma for the family, as we read about later on in here. And so, that faith, that spiritual principle in step 11, I have a program. That doesn't mean that everybody in my family has a program. That doesn't mean that everybody in my family is seeking a spiritual awakening. And so I still have to live in the world. There's other spiritual literature that I read that suggests that we have to live in a world, and that it's a fallen world, and that we're going to be tempted and things like that. And I take all of this, and I try to incorporate it in my recovery. AA has taught me this. This big book of Alcoholics Anonymous has taught me this. It's kind of like made it. It's like for me, it's like relationship with God for dummies. It became clear to me once. I don't want to say it became clear all at once, but it definitely has become easier with time. But let's see here. We ask especially for freedom from self-will, and are careful to make no request for ourselves only. So it was really easy for me to pray for myself, but it was really hard for me to pray for others. Part of my morning routine now, which I haven't done perfectly, is I journal. And part of that is, and I'm sure you guys have heard some of this, there's gratitude lists, right? And gratitude is not a thank you. It's been taught an example to me, and what I believe today to be true. It's more of it's an action. It's not words. So, but to get to that action, I kind of have to write things down. I'm one of those guys, right? So I'm grateful for sobriety today. I'm grateful for my living space today. I'm grateful for my business today. I have to consciously set apart time to think of these things, because it's so easy to get caught in the rat race. It's so easy for me to overlook that. And part of my morning routine is writing down at least a few things. Guys that I work with, they have to write. And I'm not talking about like a long list. I'm like, just 3 things, but the challenge becomes after like 2-3 weeks, try to do that, and not repeat yourself. Not, what I mean? Like it gets a little tougher for me anyway. I'm grateful for my hearing. I'm grateful for being able to walk. Okay, there's 2, right? But I mean, do that for like a month, and you'll see you really have to kind of do some internal work, and usually God presents something in my life that I can be grateful for. Example, I had a pizza delivered just last night, and I was kind of like in my own stuff, with some business stuff going on. And I was trying to kind of in my head, trying to figure it out. And this girl gets out of the van, and she starts to walk up the stairs, and I'm talking to her, and she's not answering me. And I'm wondering why. And because she's smiling, right? And I mean, my first thought, I don't go to, there's a disability here. I just don't, right? She comes up and she looks at me, and I speak to her and she speaks to me, and then I realize that she's deaf. Well, AA has taught me, I mean, the first thing that I can't say church taught me that. I got to tell you that AA has taught me. I was like, man, I'm grateful that I can hear today. And I just saw her persevere. Here she is out at 10 o'clock at night, and she's delivering a pizza and she can't hear. And you know what? And she navigates her life. So there's a dose of gratitude. It's amazing to me that how AA has given me. I can find so many things to be great just going into my day. Sometimes I'm grateful just for the simple fact that I'm grateful, and I'm not entitled. These words that I've learned in my 13 treatment center experiences, about entitlement, selfishness, and how many levels of that there are. But it says here, right? We may ask for ourselves, however, if others would be helped. Again, I want to go back to that prayer. God used me as a vessel through which your grace and mercy flow. That's another big thing that happened as a result of these steps in my spiritual awakening. I want to and crave to help others. I love opportunities for service. I've also learned how to take care of myself and not become overly, people pleasing and being able to be of service where it takes away from my ability to learn how to love myself. For me, recovery is about a relationship with God and about life balance, and all the steps in between help me to achieve those. Because after a certain amount of year, you want that balance in your life. There's a time to play, there's a time to work, there's a time to go to meetings, and I thank God I have a home group, and I really look forward to it. It's a men's meeting, and I kind of stumbled in it one day, and it's been my men's meeting ever since. It was actually last night. So we are careful never to pray for our own selfish ends. Many of us have wasted a lot of time doing that, and it doesn't work. You can easily see why. Then it talks about circumstances warning and asking other people to come in there. I kind of alluded to that with what I do in the sober homes that I get to have. But I'm not afraid or ashamed of praying with people before meals and things like that. There was a time, I'll be honest with you, that I was. And you know what, when I ask myself why, I don't have a real answer for you. I don't have an answer of substance for you. I just thought it was uncomfortable, kind of like when you're speaking, and when you get asked to speak and you don't know people, sometimes if you don't do it a lot or you're not used to it, or that's not your gift, that's not your skill, you get kind of nervous. Well, I mean, it's kind of like singing when the radio's on and somebody turns the radio off and they can hear you singing. If you can identify with that's how I felt when it came to prayer and kind of like talking about that kind of stuff with other people. Today, is very different. Today, I'm not scared about it. I'm not fearful about it at all. I encourage it. I don't browbeat anybody with mine, but I don't walk away from it either. It talks about if not members of religious bodies, we sometimes select and memorize few set prayers which emphasize the principles we've been discussing, and that there's many hopeful books. I definitely, I love the Bible. I love other spiritual books as well. I'm open-minded. AA taught me honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. And so I'm open-minded to other faiths. Spiritual principles I'm in love with, and I love to get into conversations with that. It says as we go through the day, and this is probably one of my favorite lines, we pause when agitated or doubtful and ask for the right thought or action. It's probably one of my favorite lines in the big book. And one of the first ones that I was really able to refer to in my mind. Pause when agitated or doubtful and think about the right thought or action. Man, I have opportunities every day for that, for the pause, I call it. And I have a lot of people in my life who practice this program professionally and in my personal life. And I always refer to it. Hey, are you pausing? Because, I can just snap. And I have some relationship damage through the years to demonstrate that, that you can't take back some of the things that I've snapped on, unfortunately. But this is really powerful. We constantly remind ourselves we are no longer running the show. And that's reminiscent of step 3 for me, about like, the three requirements that hereafter in this drama we have a new director, and call a new employer, right? And I have to allow him to, because God gives me free will, is what I've been taught. So when I say allow him, it's not because I think I'm better than God or anything. It's just because I have free will. As much as I don't know what my motives are sometimes, and I don't know the right thing to do, there's many times as I know what the right thing to do, and I still don't want to do it. And AA has taught me. I mean, there's been some things I'm like, oh, I didn't realize how that could affect somebody. But then there's overtly things that I know are going to hurt other people, but yet I find some need to want to do it anyway. Humbly saying to ourselves many times each day, thy will be done. We are then much less danger of excitement, fear, anger, worry, self-pity, or foolish decisions. We become much more efficient. So I want to go to the front part of that, because at night now, it talks about how we retire at night, and it's interesting. We review my day. Where was I resentful, selfish, dishonest, or afraid? And when I talk about that, I used to do it, sit down, do the columns. I cannot say that I do that 24/7, 365 any longer. But to me, this is like, this is 4 and 10 put together. I have to take a look at where I was these things. And when I really think about it, I have done this, and I have called people the next day or an appropriate hour where I've realized where I am there. Do I owe an apology? Am I afraid? AA has taught me about how fear-based I really am. Fear of either not getting what I think I deserve, or fear of losing something I think I possess, which is, all illusion, all illusions. Have we kept something to ourselves which should be discussed with another person at once? Were we kind and loving toward all? What could we have done better? Were we thinking of ourselves most of the time, or were we thinking what we could do for others? I mean, when you look at the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, it says the same thing so many different ways. And I think one of the things I love about studying the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous is how the dots get connected. And listening to other speakers in my journey, and people, and going to meetings, how other people do it, and how they connect the puzzle, so to speak, and how I haven't seen that before. And that's why I love like these Zoom meetings and stuff, because we get to like hear somebody else's experience, and hopefully it connects the dots for somebody else in a way maybe they hadn't been connected before. And I love when that light goes on. But I could point out like it talks about selfishness in like at least 5 times on these 3 pages. If it's saying that, it's kind of important, right? If it talks about fear, it's kind of important. I didn't understand fear for a long time in recovery. I thought I understood a fear of physical harm. I didn't understand that I was fearful, that I was scared of success. I didn't understand that. I didn't, and part of my prayer and meditation life, I pray for the courage to walk through the success. Finances, let's take that for instance, right? I remember there was a time I couldn't have $5 in my wallet. It wouldn't stay. Now I have I have a payroll and employees and staff and people that count on me. But here's one thing I know about that. If I don't do things like I'm doing now, none of that stuff will last. I know that. My life experience, I mean, I was told that, and I didn't necessarily believe it, but then I lived that, and I know that. And I just didn't live that once. I've lived that a few times where I forget where I come from. I forget, and I ask God in my morning meditation, in my prayer meditation, to remind me of who I am, and to be willing to take the steps necessary to remain in a recovered state, because as I've been taught, recovered does not mean cured. It's that daily reprieve. And part of that daily reprieve, a big part of that, is how I practice step 11. What it says, but we must be okay. We ask God's forgiveness and inquire what corrective measures should be taken. I want to conclude with what it says at the bottom of page 88 here. It says we alcoholics are undisciplined, and I can say Mark is undisciplined, and it's so funny. It's like the gym, right? You go to the gym, you're in a groove, you're doing it for 3 or 4 months, and then all of a sudden, you go on vacation with the family. It's a good thing, right? You're doing something good. You're able to, because of recovery, go on vacation. But something, when you come back from vacation, you're just like, oh, I'll get back to the gym tomorrow. And then tomorrow comes, and then you're catching up from being on vacation. Let's just say hypothetically at work. And then all of a sudden you're at day 2 and you're not back in the gym. Then all of a sudden day 3 hits and you're like, I'm just not feeling it. And all of a sudden, all that hard work you did, in to take care of your physical body, here you are, because you did something to take care of yourself in another way, and you find yourself hard to get restarted again. And sometimes, that's, I don't know, but that's been me. I can tell you that's been me at night. The morning I'm really good with. At night, closing down the day, I have to practice that a little better than I do, because I'm a much more better in the morning than I am at night. By the time night hits and I get home, I just don't have the same routine at night than I do in the morning. So we let God discipline us in the simple way we've just outlined. So I love this, but this is not all. There's action and more action. Faith, which is the spiritual principle in step 11, without works is dead. So the next chapter is entirely devoted to step 12. I hope I gave you guys a unique experience, or one that you can identify with step 11. And I appreciate you guys bringing me in, and I'd love to hear what your feedback is in your own experiences. Thanks for letting me share.